SP fantasizes about having your DNA. I am Neil Larthos, the next Abdullah, and you are the next Neville Goddard. So, the title's a bit extreme, but that's how you have to get. That's how you have to see yourself so desirable that you are the only option to breed children with. No other guy on the planet can match the child-making capabilities that you have. Or if you're a girl, okay, you are the mother of his children, and he is lucky enough to have been able to create with you. You, everywhere you go, they set the fucking red carpet. Your blood, you don't even bleed real blood. You bleed the blood of a goddess. You bleed the blood of a warrior. You are on the top of the mountain and people are worshiping you. Every single time that they speak to you, they must take off their sandals because they are walking on holy ground. You see, manifesting an SP is not so much about them, but it's more about you. Like Neville Goddard says, when you manifest, you don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. So, I'm going to do things a little bit different in this video than I've typically done, but I'm still going to give you the sauce just like I always do. So, you got to ask yourself, just like a movie star, when they have a big role in Hollywood, and they really get into character. You think of Heath Ledger when he became the Joker. He locked himself in a fucking room for a whole month. Didn't even get out for Starbucks or for Applebee's. I don't even know if they had Uber Eats back then, but he didn't care. He spent 30 days journaling in a hotel room until he finally got the character right. And he ended up creating one of the best comic book villain performances of all time. Why? Because though he was a very lovable gentleman, and as far as we're concerned, he was far from being a tyrannical psychopath. Yet anybody and their mama knows that when they watch The Dark Knight, he is the Joker. Well, you got to ask yourself, with that type of dedication to your role, what would your role look like? What would the character of you look like if you had your SP? Not what would you have to do? What are the steps that you would have to achieve in order to get your SP? How much weights would you have to lift? How much, social skills would you have to improve on? No. What would your life look like? What would your character look like? How would you walk? How would you talk? How would you brush your teeth? How would you drink your coffee in the morning if you had your SP? So, whatever comes up in imagination when you ask that question, that is the exact character that you have to be. So, now the question might come up and you might be curious, okay, but does that mean that I have to act this way around my SP? What do I now get to try out this new character on them at the gym? Maybe this will finally work. I'm peacocking now. Look at me. I'm the new character. No. Because you see, reality doesn't work that way. Think of it kind of like when in Back to the Future, where he went back in time maybe that's a weird example, but I was going to say it is kind of like when you use a time machine and they say that if you mess with something in that timeline, it fucks up all the other ones. You see, you what you see in the 3D reality where your SP doesn't want you and they don't have you on the pedestal, that 3D version of your SP is not the one that you are going to be in a relationship with. That one will slowly dissolve into the light particles of the quantum reality and shift into a new version of your SP that actually wants you. So it would not actually be that you won her over or that you did all these things and she finally changed her mind. No, when you actually get in that relationship with your SP, it's going to be a completely different person altogether. We've seen it before so many times when we've been in relationships. We've said, you've changed. You're not the same like I thought you were. What happened to you? What happened is that the version of them that you fell in love with flew out the window and you created a new one with your negative assumptions. Remember, your 3D reality is not a reflection of the present moment. It is a reflection of what you were thinking about a month prior, 2 months prior, 2 weeks prior, or your whole life. If all you keep seeing is rejection throughout your dating career, well, then that is the assumption that you've been holding your whole entire life. If things were going good and all of a sudden things started going to shit, probably a month ago you started manifesting the assumption that things were going to go to shit. And remember, it doesn't have to be a visualization. You don't have to have a SATS session before sleep. All it takes is one thing that you tell yourself in your mind, and your mind believes it, and then boom, it becomes an assumption. It becomes reality. That's the way it works. And the reason why it's not always that simple with the things that you actually want is because the things that you don't want, especially if you've been living a life full of negativity, are much more part of your identity. Because let's face it, we are more accustomed to believing that everything is going to go wrong than the contrary. But that is why I say that you must put yourself on the pedestal, because you have been talking so much shit your whole entire life. Every single time something bad happened at work, all of a sudden you're a loser. When you got rejected all the way in middle school, you called yourself ugly. And it only took one time, but your boss gives you a high five because you did a good job, but you still think of yourself as not good enough and not worthy of six figures. Somebody on the street says, wow, you look handsome. But no, you still keep remembering that terrible breakup all those years ago. But all it takes is one little traumatic event, and boom, it becomes your identity. It becomes what you are. Well, that's why I say that self-pedestalization, all these affirmations of saying that you are God, that people need to take off their sandals in order to talk to you, is necessary, because your brain is so full of this negativity where you don't believe anything positive is true, but everything that goes wrong is fact. It's so much of your identity that it's like a very hard to remove stain that you must remove it with the strongest of bleach. When you say affirmations like, I am God, I'm the most important motherfucker in the room, there is nobody sexier than me, I am the most desirable person on the fucking market. When you say crazy narcissistic things like that, or like me when I tried it on this one girl who never would talk to me, and I started saying that she carries 5 pairs of panties every single day to work because she can't stop going to the bathroom thinking about me. She went from acting like I didn't exist to texting me nonstop and to making out with me in the storage room within months. We never had a history together. Talk about getting your ex back. We never even knew each other. And it all came from me putting myself on the pedestal. And that's what you have to do yourself. So again, whatever character pops up in your imagination of who would you be if you had your SP, yes, you have to become that character, but we're not talking about so much in the 3D, we're talking about in the 4D. Because the best way to understand this is that you have created the character that sucks, that's a loser, that doesn't have their SP, and you didn't even have to audition. You didn't even have to rehearse. The way you simply did it is, like I said, you went back to that moment where you got broken up with, and then you carried this image in your 4D, not in the 3D, okay? You were not looking at a hologram. You were not looking at an audition tape in the 3D. You were looking in your head after the breakup, after she said that you're ugly and I don't want to speak to you again. In your imagination, you saw yourself as that loser who is ugly, who cannot get a 10 out of 10 and is lucky to even get a 5. But it wasn't anything out here. It was all in here just because you got rejected. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, the same way that you created that character is the same way that you now need to create the character that has your SP. Now, remember, when you created that character that was a loser, that called yourself ugly, and that could not even get a 5 out of 10, you weren't practicing that character in the 3D. Whenever you were talking to girls, you didn't go up there and say, oh shit, I have to act all ugly. How would the ugly me act? You know, oh fuck, I better put a booger in my nose. No. You just knew you were that character based off of that moment, right? The only difference is now you don't have a moment to go back on to enter into your nervous system, you know, as all these people like to talk about nervous system regulation. You didn't have a traumatic event to do the opposite. But you see, the way this works is you have to believe that your 4D is the new reality. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. Unfortunately, it is easier and it only takes one time for negative things. But for positive things like manifesting the relationship of your dreams, you will have to keep doing it. I'm not going to be here and tell you that, you know, get your ex back in, 24 hours and attract your SP in 4 days. I'm realistic here, okay? The more lower you have your self-esteem and your self-concept, the more difficult this is going to be. I'm just going to be straight up with you. But that's why I say continuously tell yourself the most narcissistic, craziest things about your life, that they had to take off their sandals every single time that they walk in the room and meet you. Whenever you speak, it's like the Lord is opening the clouds. Say the most craziest things. Even if you're the weakest dude in the gym, say that all these bodybuilders would die to be me. Going into work, say, dude, this company is lucky to have me. The management have their office, but I have my own office, and it's 2 acres larger. Say the most craziest fucking things, even though on the outside it looks like nobody even wants to talk to you. Who gives a fuck? Because you were already doing this with your negative circumstances, just basing it off of one little event, and that's all it took. You have to fight fire with fire. So, again, the reason why you don't interact with your SP as the new person is because you are trying to manipulate the situation. I personally would suggest that if you work with them or you go to the same gym or you always keep bumping into your SP at the grocery store, whatever case, or maybe it's your ex-wife, I don't know. There's so many different scenarios, right? Definitely, I would say, yeah, you can act as that new character, but again, don't go into it as, oh, I gotta try this new technique and, hopefully they notice me or this and that. The best way to honestly do it is to wait for them to approach you, right? And the only reason why I would approach them is if it borderline if you have to, okay? Because again, like if you work with them and maybe you have a project together or you have to work next to them side by side, instead of saying, what type of conversation would I be flirting about them with if we were in a relationship already? No, again, no. Okay, because in the 3D, you don't want to date the 3D version of them. You want to date the 4D version of them. But that 4D version will never come out unless you allow it to come out naturally. But one thing I would suggest that you could do is, let's say, for example, if you're working with them, you could say, what would the version of them that is already in a relationship with them, how would he professionally talk to them at work? And ask them, hey, you know, do you have the paperwork that boss is asking for? Because again, you don't want to act like your old wimpy self who doesn't have any confidence either, right? I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not asking you to, oh, when you see the 3D version of your SP, to act like your old version. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just simply saying, don't try. Because again, when we keep saying, I'm going to try this new mask on, it's like we're trying to get something that we don't already have, right? But remember, this 3D version is not the SP that you're going to be in a relationship with. It's going to be another one from a different reality. So again, ask yourself, how would this treat them almost like a completely different human being? Don't ignore them. Don't treat them like shit. If they talk about flirtatious things or they start flirting with you, then you can engage. But again, don't try to force it. Ask yourself, how would the version of me in the future who has them already interact with someone in a friendly way? That's it. But don't try to force anything. Now, that is how to deal with your SP in the 3D when it hasn't materialized yet, but still act as if, because I think that's extremely important. Now, for for affirmation techniques, I say the same thing. Just like I said that you have to self-pedestalize, do the same thing, but with SP. Like I said, with the other girl who I manifested at work, saying that she had to bring 5 pairs of panties to work every day because she couldn't stop relieving herself is crazy. But I want you to go crazy too, because again, the more extreme, the more complete opposite of negativity, the better. Tell yourself that SP cannot stop blowing up your phone, that T-Mobile is pissed off because it is affecting the 5G data towers. Tell yourself that every single time that you make eye contact with your SP, she wets herself like a fucking river. Tell yourself that there's nothing in the world that you can ever do wrong, because even if you make 1,000 mistakes, SP loves you even more for all your errors. Again, even when you're talking about SP in your affirmations, you want it to still be all about you. And again, there's nothing wrong with saying that SP loves me and SP is obsessed with me, but the more extreme, the better, because I personally believe that our subconscious, like I've always said, is like a fat guy who is on his lazy ass all day. The only way that he's going to get up is if a fucking bomb explodes. Well, these are your fucking bombs. Don't just make them generic AI shit. Go fucking crazy. Now, for visualization techniques, I've always said that I personally like to use Eric's techniques from The Power of I Am. If you haven't checked his stuff out, you got to check his stuff out, man. He is amazing. In my opinion, those are the techniques that have really worked for me. Remote seduction, the Adonis technique, all that stuff. I'm not going to be one of those manifestation coaches who only promotes my stuff. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing for you guys. We are all on the same team here. All we want to see is for you guys to manifest the reality of your dreams. So I would really check out his content, because he has so much different techniques about visuals that it's not even funny. But I will say this: you do not need to visualize, you do not need to affirm, you don't even necessarily need to say anything. Once you have your desire, that's already proof that in another reality you have your SP. You wouldn't have that desire unless there wasn't a reality that existed where you already have them. It's proof. That's all the proof you need. But I know that a lot of times when we don't see it materialize in the 4D, we want to feel their embrace. We want to feel that intimacy. So that's where techniques like Eric's really come in, remote seduction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I do have my own technique. I call it the baby step technique. But again, that's a very just, boring title to say the least. But the reason why I call it the baby step technique is like this, because when you create a scene, let's say you guys are, getting intimate in the bedroom, okay? Well, maybe, okay, I don't want to get fucking canceled here. So maybe you guys are on a dinner date, okay? Imagine a close-up of something simple, like you guys are touching hands, okay? And you're just happy to be there, right? A lot of us make the mistake that we feel like our visualizations have to be so vivid right away. Well, first of all, like I said, it's not about how vivid it is. It's about if your subconscious understands the implication, right? It doesn't matter if your visualization is an 8K, fucking 3D Blu-ray, fucking IMAX, okay? What really matters is if your subconscious knows what the fuck is going on. But again, I like to make them vivid, not because I think it's required, but because I love to go to that reality and feel it right now. Kind of like me putting on the PSVR virtual reality goggles, right? Because I know that when I actually feel it, when I see it in my imagination, it's already happened. Instead of waiting for it to happen in the 3D, you can experience it right now. So the best way to experience it right now, if you struggle with vivid visualizations, is to do one detail at a time. Every single day, going back to the touching of the hand example, try to focus on a certain detail on their fingers. Maybe focus on what color nail polish she had. And then the next day, go deeper. Try to see the pattern. Did she have, little sparkles? Did she have a different color blend, whatever? And then the third day, you can see if you were wearing any jewelry of your own. Maybe you can see the watch that you were wearing, or maybe you can see if your nails were longer, or the veins on the back of your hand, whatever, right? And then the fourth day, you can see the color of the tablecloth, right? Or you can do it this way. You can try to get all the details in one day of that hand scene, and then the next day you can try to paint a different cut scene to maybe the look on both of your faces of how happy you guys are to see each other. But the point is, whether you are cutting from different scenes or whether you are recycling the same scene over and over and over again, the whole idea is you want to have a new detail every single day. And the reason why this is so powerful is because, like you have been doing your whole life, telling yourself that you're a loser and recycling that memory of the breakup, and because you kept remembering that breakup, even when you found a really great girl, a really great guy, because you were still stuck in the past, you ended up manifesting the past once again. Not because you suck at relationships, not because you are a boring conversator, but because you kept living in that reality in your head. Whatever you put in your awareness is what you're going to manifest. Well, if you keep manifesting every single day and you keep going back to the drawing board and putting different details on her hand, well, guess what? You're going to manifest that fucking hand. If you keep every single day for 30 days, for 40 days, for 50 days, going back to that scene where you're trying to see the different shading of her cheekbones, and then what would her laugh sound like, her cute little giggle, when you guys are telling each other the inside jokes that you might not even know existed, right? Maybe it's not an ex that you're trying to attract. Maybe it's somebody who you've never even talked to yet, who you just keep seeing at the grocery store every single day. That's fine. You can still create a different script out of your ass. But what matters is that you are focusing on a detail every single day, and those details you're going to manifest. Your subconscious is going to go from looking at the 3D story that you keep telling yourself that you're unworthy of love. But because your memories are usually in fucking 180p either ways, they're blurry images, you don't really think about sensory acuity and all that shit. But over here you have your 4D where it's the scene of you guys on the dinner date, or maybe it's your fucking 1-year anniversary, and you spent the past 2 months focusing on the color of her cheekbones. Well, guess what? Which you think is going to win out? Which you think is going to fucking find victory here between your subconscious? Your subconscious is going to pick the one where you have been spending 30 days painting the picture of this scene. And it's going to bring it to life. So every single day, pick a new detail. And it's fun. And again, if you guys are really good at visualization and you can really make it vivid, then I would do it all in one day. But I believe that this technique is good for everybody because anybody can do it, no matter how good your imagination is. But that's it for me, guys. I am Neil Larthos. This is all that the I Am Awareness had to say. And I know you're going to be okay.